Fleur asked, I know you guys aren't keen on talking about shadow functions, but I've been wondering for a long time how we relate to functions that are not in our stack. Are they blind spots for us, or are they just not on our radar? So we have
what does that mean, not in our stack too?
Right.
For people that are very new.
So, so the shadow functions are oftentimes, or what is oftentimes referred to as shadow functions, are the 4 cognitive functions that are not in your, not first 4 in your stack or in the car model. So the 4 functions that live outside the car model. And we have a little bit of a different take on the shadow functions than most people do. We enjoy things like John Beebe's 8-function model. I think it's a delightfully elegant model that I don't necessarily know if I fully agree with how tidy it is, even though I think it's very interesting and has some, it's compelling and it has some really great points. My observation has been that our shadow functions are a bit of a mixed bag, primarily based on who has influenced us the most throughout our life. So the functions that are well represented, say, in your family. So if you do, say, like a family tree, and you look at if you have relationships with your extended family, but primarily your immediate family, if you look at the function stacks or the personality types of the people in your family, most people will see that there's a couple of functions, at least one, if not a couple of them, that are not very well represented. They weren't dominant or auxiliary or drive or co-pilot functions for their parents or for any of their siblings. And so they just didn't get a lot of influence around them. Maybe they were influential in their culture, and that's a possibility. But a lot of times, those are the functions that we have the least familiarity with because we just didn't get any exposure to them, or at least actually, no exposure is sometimes worse than bad exposure, if that makes sense. Like if we don't get any exposure to something at all, that can sometimes be worse than having somebody who uses that function as a quote unquote strength or as a driver or co-pilot, but isn't using it particularly well. So the functions that are just not around you are the ones that are usually the biggest blind spots when it comes to the shadow functions, or at least that's been my observation with the people that I've coached. I think that there are various models of how the shadow functions are used that are beyond Beebe's model. And I think a lot of those are very compelling and interesting too. But my observation has been that the influences in your life are some of the biggest tells about what your shadow function blind spots are going to be. And what's challenging about talking about that or writing about that is it's very individual dependent, right? That's super context dependent. You can't really, it's hard to make a model out of a mixed bag, if that makes sense. So that's one of the reasons why we don't talk about it that much, is because there's not as much rhyme or reason to the concept, in my opinion, as with the 4-function model. And on top of that, most people need to master their 4 functions. Like, most people still need to do work in their car model. I've met very few people who are ready to graduate onto mastering or trying to address their shadow functions. And just like with anything, we have a cost of specialization. And so most of the time, it's just best to sort of allow other people to handle the heavy lifting and then learn from them over time if possible. Like, take, for example, in my family, introverted feeling or authenticity was just nowhere. Like, nobody used it in my family. The only person who had it as part of their car model was my brother, who's an ENTJ. So he used it as his 3-year-old or inferior process. And that was the only person, like, that is all it was represented in my family for the most part. So being married to Joel has been incredibly educational, because authenticity or introverted feeling tends to be the thing that I just don't see. Like, it's just like, I get easily overwhelmed emotionally, and I have a hard time identifying my emotions, and I have a really hard time sort of calibrating them. So I leave the introverted feeling or authenticity heavy lifting to Joel, while at the same time benefit from him utilizing it in front of me and going, okay, that's what it looks like when it's done well. And sometimes when it's done poorly, but mostly well.
I'm getting it tonight. Man.
But I mean, like, the same thing with my introverted thinking or accuracy. So
I want to make 2 comments on that. One, if you just were like, what in the world is she talking about? If you're new to this, and that was like, do not panic. That is like super geek out, deep stuff. Rabbit hole stuff that most people, even in the personality hacker community, are like, that's advanced material. So if you're like very confused on what in the world the question was or even the answer, don't worry about it. You're cool. Like, that's not even in the book. So we're not going to take any more time to really talk about it, because it is something. If you wanted to know more about it, John Beebe has wrote a book all about it, or at least his model that she was referencing.
A paper. He's written a very good paper on it.
The second thing is, what we do is what we will write about and speak about, we vet in coaching and client work situations. So we don't really like we like to expand on theories. We do it all the time, but we usually don't teach it or write about it until we put it into practice and find ways that we can implement it in somebody's life around like a coaching situation.
Right.
And we haven't found with this particularly enough patterns to use in coaching to draw something that we would write down and say, this is how we think it works. Because it's been so different for all the different people we've coached or worked with as clients. So we don't feel comfortable in saying this is a pattern that will apply to a broad spectrum of people. It's so unique and individualized. Yeah. So that's, I think, really why we've stayed away from it in all seriousness, is because when we talk about things we write in this book, this stuff has been vetted through years of coaching and working with people and telling them, hey, this is how this works. Go work on it, get feedback. Oh, that worked. Cool. And then we keep doing it, and we've refined that over the years. So the stuff we want to write about and speak about is stuff that we vetted, and we really we haven't yet found a pattern in the coaching realm, in the practical application realm, that we want to be able to speak to. So,
but the second we do, you guys will be the first to hear about it.
Absolutely. Well, you put a lot of stuff on it. And write a lot of stuff on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, it's Joe Markwood, Antonia Dodge. Thanks for watching that video. You can go get a copy of Personality Hacker in any bookstore online. You can order it from your local bookstore in your town, which is cool, because then you can support the local bookstores in your town. But this book is really powerful. It's separate into 2 sections. The first part is theory of the system, of the way we approach Myers-Briggs. We talk about the CAR model. We unpack how to learn about your cognitive functions. And the second half of the book goes into each of the 16 individual personality types.